Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us again today for another Facebook Live event with Spark Learning Lab. Today, we will be focusing on the newly released Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant, which is a new funding stream available to help both early education and our out-of-school time programs rebuild and strengthen their programs. My name is Mike Bachman, and I'm the director of Spark Learning Lab. Spark is providing multiple tiers of technical assistance to programs throughout the grant period. We will continue that today with this next episode of our Facebook Live series that delves more deeply into the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant. We do want this session to be interactive. If at any time you have questions or comments, please post those. As always, our communications manager, Darcy Marlette, and our business specialist, Lisa Metler, are monitoring the posts and will let me know if there's anything we can address on the air. If we are unable to address your specific comments or questions today, we'll be sure to do them through the FAQs on the Build, Learn, Grow website, or if we host any future Facebook Live events. Today, we are specifically focused on our exempt school LEA programs and the questions that we have received pertinent to their business. First, we want to start with the eligibility criteria, just to level set a little bit to make sure that everyone on the call understands what those eligibility criteria are. First, you must be licensed, licensed center, licensed home, registered, or certified exempt as of March 11th, 2021. So for our school programs out there, you must be certified exempt, or your classrooms must have been licensed by March 11th, 2021 in order to be eligible for the scholarship. You must be open and serving children. Now, if you are temporarily closed due to COVID exposure, you are still eligible for the grant. Also, if you are temporarily closed due to extended breaks, such as fall break or winter break, you are still eligible for the grant. Finally, you must be in good standing with the certified exemptions, the regulations provided by Indiana's Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning and their licensing arm. Next, let's talk a little bit about what the allowable uses of these funds are. The first thing that you can spend the dollars on are our personnel costs related to hiring, compensating, training, or retaining staff. You can also spend the dollars on health and safety training like CPR or first aid. COVID-19 safety-related needs to keep staff and children safe. Goods and services necessary to resume and strengthen your operations. Mental health support, such as counseling for children and employees. And then finally, any facility fees, such as improvements or maintenance to the facilities that are part of the program. Now, again, all of these things can be found in a resource called the Allowable Expenses Guide that is found on the Build, Learn, Grow website. And it's a great resource to use when you're thinking about how you might use these funds. Let's talk a little bit about the application structure. For those of you that have not gone in yet to apply, when you do enter the application, which is found in the iLead portal, the first thing that you'll be asked to do is to review some program information. This information will include things such as the name of your program type, the administrator contact information, and you'll be asked to confirm that you are eligible based on the eligibility requirements that we just spoke about. Next, you will enter your enrollment and staffing information for your program. This information will include the age group served by classroom if you have multiple classrooms, the typical number of staff present at one time, the average attendance, and the maximum capacity of your early learning program. Next, on the expenses page, you'll be presented with an estimated grant award to support monthly operating expenses. The total that you receive considers your program type, your average attendance, your staffing costs, your quality level, and your geography. Finally, or next, you'll be asked to review some banking information. to receive the dollars for these grants, they will be directly deposited into a bank account. So if you have not yet set up direct deposit with the Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning for, say, CCDF, you will be asked to establish the direct deposit by entering banking account information. If direct deposit has been set up previously, you will simply review and confirm that the information on the screen is correct. Next, you will see a list of the support categories. Those are the allowable costs and expenses that we just took a look at. And you'll be asked to check the boxes of in any of the buckets that you intend to spend the funds. Finally, you will review the 12 agreements. These agreements are the grant requirements. You must confirm that you understand and plan to adhere to all of the grant agreements during the full grant period. Again, the grant period lasting until September 30th of 2023. So let's talk a little bit about expenses. One question that we have received: since the licensed or certified exempt classroom is part of a public or private school, can we include the expenses for the whole program? The answer to this is no/maybe. First of all, we want to encourage you before you begin to think about your expenses, to talk to a financial expert. They will be able to provide you an equation that looks at what you are using in your school building for your early learning program versus all of the other age groups that you are serving. From there, you will be able to quickly determine what expenses or what percentage of the shared expenses would be used towards this grant. Now, any of the expenses that are directly used for your early learning program, you would be able to use and document as part of your expenses for the Child Care Stabilization Grant. Again, much of this is explained in a resource that is available to you on the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant website. That is called the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Worksheet, which provides you guidance and also gives you room to calculate your expenses and respond to all questions that you will find within the application. So if you have not yet gone to complete your application, we do encourage you to go to the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization website, download that stabilization grant worksheet, complete it for your program, and then you will have everything right in front of you that you need as you go in to complete the application. So the majority of today, we want to spend around some of the provider agreements. There are two of the 12 provider agreements, which again are the grant requirements that are specifically noted for LEAs and school-based programs. So we'd like to take a look at those today and give you some ideas on how you might be able to meet these grant requirements. Again, another great resource found on the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization website is what you see on your screen now, which is the provider agreements. This is something that you can download before, during, or after completing the grant application that you can put up on your corkboard or have in front of you to make sure that until September 30th of 2023, you are meeting all of the necessary and applicable grant requirements, keep that in front of you. So the first agreement we want to talk about today that specifically mentions LEAs. My program will invest at least 25% of awarded funds toward increasing staff wages or benefits. Note that providers may not use these awarded funds to supplant or replace existing costs, but rather must invest them in new wage and benefit enhancements. The most important piece here, this requirement does not apply to local education agencies. So those programs that are here with us today, or any program that has applied for and successfully received the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant, is not required to meet this agreement throughout the grant period. Now, we encourage you to think about, as we do know from the most recent 2019 workforce study, early learning educators are consistently making less than their elementary or primary school counterparts. And so in thinking about the compensation and the benefits packages that are available to our early learning workforce that are in LEAs, we would encourage you to think about how you can use the Child Care Stabilization Grant to ensure that there is greater parity between your early learning program and your primary school program or other age groups if you don't currently have parity, right? We're not assuming that you don't. We're just looking at the data to see that early learning educators do make less. And so there is an opportunity here to use the stabilization dollars to make sure there's greater parity between your different programs that you host within your LEA. This next agreement is actually where we will spend the largest portion of our time today before we take any of your questions live on the air. The agreement reads, if my program is a local education agency that did not indicate allocations toward early learning in our elementary and secondary school emergency relief plan, or your ESSER plan, my program will use at least 10% of the grant on coordination with community-based early childhood programs and/or out-of-school time programs. So again, LEAs are being held accountable that if you did not allocate any of your ESSER plan dollars towards early learning, then you must use 10% of the Child Care Stabilization Grant on coordination with community-based early childhood programs and/or out-of-school time programs. Now, in order to assist with this, SPARC, the Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning, and the Department of Education have come together to do a landscape review across the nation of some best practices in coordinating both our LEAs with our community-based early childhood and out-of-school time programs. And so we'd like to walk through some of those best practices that we found today and give some examples of what this might look like and how you might want to invest the 10% of your grant on these coordination activities. So what we found in looking across the nation is that there are 6 key areas of support where LEAs can support our community-based programs and/or community-based programs can support our LEAs. The first is around learning and opportunity loss. This would be, as we all know, thinking about summer learning loss, plenty of research out there about that, as well as what might be lost at various times during our extended breaks. Summer learning, as we just addressed, summer learning is a place where we can support each other and have greater coordination. Social and emotional learning, many times our schools and LEAs have strong social and emotional curriculums that they are using, and our early learning partners might need some more education or assistance in doing so. However, there are times that our early education programs have a strong curriculum also that they could share over with the LEA. Distance learning, we all know that in this time of the pandemic, distance learning is a place where the early childhood programs are attempting to step up and provide full day services to those school age programs in the case of temporary closures or class closures. And so how can the LEA further support that early childhood program or that out of school time program in supporting those school age students? Professional development, many times professional development opportunities are made available to our LEAs that could also be made to our ECE and out of school time partners. And then finally, software and technology improvements. So now I'd just like to take the next bit of time here to kind of dig into each of these and look at some examples of what we could do. In the area of opportunity and of opportunity loss, collaborating to add programming. So thinking about how can the school, if you have extra space, allow an established ECE or out of school time program use space within your school building to support your children, whether that is with wraparound care and education, extended day education, or adding preschool rooms. Many of the early childhood programs, probably right around your school, have been in business for a very long time, are established, and have good practices in terms of educating young children. So thinking about how you might repurpose those rooms to allow them to open classrooms in your space and how the dollars might support that work. Before and after school programming, again, thinking about how you might use spaces within your school and allow them to come in and offer before and after school programming, or if a local education or early childhood education or out of school time program near you is offering before and after school, how can you support that program? Possibly adding teachers to that program to help with homework assistance or enrichment curriculum. Transportation might be a key issue for that program where you could use 10% of your grant to support that. And then also in the area of multilingual learners. Many times the resources in the LEAs are in terms of supporting multilingual learners is much greater than that than in our community-based programs. So thinking about how can we come together for education and understanding, or to greater support those multilingual learners, whether it is in extended day programs, wraparound care, or even in transition to kindergarten. The next area of support would be around summer learning. So identify and financially support licensed teachers. As a previous director of a community-based program, one thing that we did in partnership with a community school that was right down the street from us is we worked together to identify licensed teachers from the school who would be interested in being a part of our summer program. And so they were actually able to use 4 hours of the day to either support children who had fallen a bit behind or to advance children who were moving forward. Remember that in your community-based programs, you have a bit more flexibility in terms of what content is being delivered to what children. And so there is the ability to think about higher ability children, as well as those who maybe need a little bit more extra support to catch up. And then financially support those licensed teachers with your 10%. Can you pay, many times the out of school time program or the summer program is not able to pay the full salary that would be paid in a school. So maybe they pay a portion and you supplement to ensure that that teacher is receiving their full salary and would be interested in taking part in that summer program. Kindergarten preparation and thinking about how are we working together to educate our kindergarten teachers as well as our early learning pre-K providers to make sure that those children have a successful transition to kindergarten. Again, in summer learning, offering a kindergarten boot camp that could be either in the school where they are actually able to see what their classroom is going to look like, or they are able to experience time with who might be their teacher, or in the community-based program, where again, you might be able to support with a licensed teacher or some sort of curriculum that can better prepare those students for that transition to kindergarten. And then finally, enrichment curriculum, thinking about how can we take the learnings that students have during the school year and extend those and make them more enriching experiences for the summer. I'm sure that many of our community-based programs, as well as our schools, would love to think better about what kind of field trips or experiential learning could be available for children that would enrich that curriculum that they had that previous year or moving into the next year. Another area of support is the social and emotional learning. So how about some transition nights? The school can work with the community-based program to bring together the students that are attending that program that will be transitioning to kindergarten in that school. They can help to pay the teachers to attend so that the students actually get to meet their teachers, as well as the families can be present to be educated on what does transition look like from the community-based program, where they may have been for 5 or more years, to the LEA and school program. Thinking about transition specialists or counselors. Are there staff people that can be hired or that are on staff that can move between the community-based program and the LEA to support the children at the time of transition, right? To better prepare them socially and emotionally in the community-based program, but also be there when they move into the school to support them further as they're moving through kindergarten. Remembering that these dollars are available until September 30th of 2023. These are all things that could be multi-year for our LEAs and our community-based programs. And then finally, community events. Many of our schools are the heart of the community. They're able to bring in some various resources like dental assistance, vision assistance, and other supports for our children. How might we share that wealth with our community-based providers and the children who will be directly feeding in to the LEA? Again, identifying some of those needs much earlier in the children's life can only help them be more prepared and more successful once they get to our school buildings. In terms of distance learning, really focusing in maybe on our out of school time learners. Personnel. So as we know, during the pandemic, and I spoke to earlier, many of our child care providers, our community-based programs out there have opened up their classrooms and their programming to support families by allowing what would normally be part-time children to come full-time while the school is experiencing a temporary closure or doing some kind of distance learning. There may be an opportunity here based on the structure within the school of how teachers are interacting with that distance learning curriculum to think about, are there school employees and faculty that can go over to the community-based programs during those temporary closures to further support those students as they are moving through their distance learning curriculum. Thinking about furniture materials for additional classroom space. So if the school is experiencing a temporary closure or is offering distance learning throughout the year for any reason and is looking for extra classroom space, you can partner with one of the community-based programs to think about, do they have a room available? And what does that room need to ensure that those students are successful during the distance learning that occurs? And then finally, e-learning supports and materials. So many times the professionals that are working with the distance learning students in our community-based programs could just use some extra support in understanding what are the needs of the distance learning curriculum or the e-learning curriculum, and how can they best support the children as they're doing that throughout the day. Or if it's only part of the day, what should they be doing after that time to ensure that the children are still engaged, that their education is enriched, and that they are remaining prepared for when they do return either to the distance learning curriculum or back to the school. Professional development. Again, thinking about those joint learning opportunities. When we are thinking about the professional development that we provide our K-3 teachers, would that be applicable for some of our early learning programs or our out of school time programs that are in our communities? Is there any training there that would be advantageous for them to take part in also? Also, I want to mention that our early learning programs and our out of school time programs are participating in professional development. And so learning what training they're receiving or what professional development they're taking part in, as many times we understand that learning through play happens often in our early childhood spaces throughout our community-based programs. And some of that could be beneficial for our kindergarten through 3 programs to understand how can we learn through play and what are the advantages to doing so. Thinking about your mentoring, coaching, and PLCs that are happening within your school. Can our community-based teachers take part in the professional learning communities that are happening with your kindergarten teachers? Can your out-of-school time staff take part in any of the roundtable discussions that maybe your various grade levels are having? And can that support their professional development as well as then support the children who are in your school or will soon be in your school? Another interesting concept to look at that we saw nationally was around mentoring and coaching. Is there an opportunity for faculty and teachers in your school to go to the community-based program during the day to support those teachers and to think about our out-of-school time staff, to think about how the milestones that they are helping those children hit are only going to help that child be successful once they get to school. So again, this could be collaboration where you have your early learning programs, mentoring and or coaching your K-3. You could have your K-3 mentoring, coaching the early learning programs based on the identified needs. And then family workshops. How can we work with our community-based programs and use 10% of the stabilization grant to ensure that our families are ready for the transition to school and our families understand the options that are available to them to extend the learning day or for that wraparound care and education. So how can we come together, whether it is sharing space, providing food, providing speakers, whatever that might be, to make sure that our families are successful, therefore our children are successful. So again, these 6 areas of support that we have found. Now, are we saying that you must spend the 10% in one of these 6 areas, that you must spend the 10% on one of these examples that we gave? Absolutely not. The requirement of the grant is that if you did not include early learning in your ESSER plan, you'll use 10% of the stabilization grant on coordination activities with those community-based early learning and out-of-school time programs. Our goal today was to kind of be a bit innovative, look at the national landscape and see what has been successful in other communities, in other states, and right here in our backyards, as I gave that anecdote about the community-based program that I was a part of, so that we can all come together for the success of our children and families. And with that, I do invite Darcy to come on and let me know, are there any questions that we have received that have been posted that we'd like to, or we are able to address today?
Thanks, Mike. We do not have any questions posted at the moment. If you do have questions for Mike, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Mike's going to cover on the next slide some information where if you think of a question later, where you can go to ask those questions, find more information. So I'll have him go ahead and cover that slide. And like I said, go ahead and put questions in the chat and we'll ask them one more chance to tail end to ask him once we've covered that info.
Awesome. Thanks, Darcy. So again, we talked about the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant website. This is a repository of all of the most up-to-date information and knowledge about the stabilization grants, and that can be found at stabilization.buildlearngrow.org. So again, encouraging everyone to go check out that website and go back regularly as it is being updated with new information on a regular basis. Spark Learning Lab is also here to help you. We are the ones managing all technical assistance and coaching for the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant. So you can contact us via email at help@indianaspark.com. You can call us at 1-800-299-1627. Follow the voice prompts and it will get you to the Spark Learning Lab help desk where our representatives are ready to assist you with any of your questions or issues that you might be having while completing the stabilization grant application. Finally, if you're like me and you just prefer to chat because you're doing 100 different things at the same time, live chat is also available on indianaspark.com, our homepage, as well as in My Spark Learning Lab through the iLead portal.
Thank you so much, Mike. We did have one question come in while you were covering that. Nicole asked, is there a document or point of reference for elaborating upon the information in the allowable expense guide?
Is there a document that expands upon the information in the allowable expense guide? Not to my knowledge, Nicole. That is the primary resource for how the dollars can be used in coordination with the grant requirements. If you do have more specific questions about how you might use the grant dollars or what something means, then I strongly encourage you to reach out to Spark Learning Lab. Again, emailing us at help@, giving us a call at the 1-800 number, or live chatting us using the website or My Spark Learning Lab. Many times when we get into the specifics of programs, it's better for us to just have a one-on-one conversation than it is to publish larger guidance.
Thank you so much, Mike. And that is the only question we had come in.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us and learning some more about the questions we have received and what we know about the child care stabilization grants for our LEAs and school-based programs. I wish you all very well, and we hope to see you next time when we're all back together for some more technical assistance and coaching support. Have a great day.